Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Global Hack Week. And today we're featuring, this week we're basically featuring API Week. I know we are currently on day number, which day is it right now? Day number 5. So we still have a couple streams before the closing ceremony. Today we'll be having the introduction. Well, not in, yeah, it's to what an API is, and then we're going to learn about FastAPI and how to use CRUD operations and Postman. And I also added something extra so we can post our API live and more people can access it online using ngrok, which is basically a tool that we'll learn in a couple minutes. But yeah, we only have 2 hours, so I'm gonna try to do things brief, but also let you to do a lot of hands-on exercises. So we're only gonna give like a brief introduction to everything, so you know what I'm talking about, and then we're gonna go into building our project. I already created repository that we're gonna start cloning, so we can have a template in there. Wait, I think I didn't add the template, so I'm gonna add it while I'm doing the stream, and then you can access all of the code that we do during the whole stream on that GitHub repository, and you can have it to access it later. And yeah, don't forget to check in. I already dropped the link to register and check in on the chat. Remember that you need to check in on the stream so you get your point for the weekend and you get your basic swag shipped directly to your home with some cool stickers and other stuff that MLH sends to Global Hack Week events. And yeah, I guess that will be all for the introductory part. So let's get started. Let me make this a bit bigger. There we go. Always remember that if you have any questions or if you have a comment or you want to have any side conversation or anything, feel free to drop anything on the chat and we can start a side conversation while the stream is going on so we have more things to talk about and not only focusing on API stuff. I always like to, I think I have had a couple streams where people start talking about different stuff that's not related to the stream, and I always enjoy those streams because I feel that I'm not alone like giving the stream, because when we have a workshops in person you can interact with participants, but us being online I'm basically talking to a screen, and I like to interact with hackers through the chat as well, which is always interesting. Okay, so a brief introduction about myself. For those of you who already know me, I stream occasionally on Global Hack Weeks. I promised myself that I would do more streams on robotics and yeah, basically hardware. But I saw that this schedule was already packed with a couple interesting hardware projects, so I decided to step back and just do a combination of cool tools that I was not able to see on the current schedule. I believe Charbel, or Bully, as some people call him, has been doing really interesting streams on robotics as well. He's a really cool person. He's also Mexican, so he's really chill. But yeah, if you ever want to join his streams, he also studied the robotics, so he definitely knows a lot about hardware. And yeah, I'm also a coach at Major League Hacking, which means that I get to travel to events and staff different hackathons in other parts of the world. I'm also in the fellowship side, so if you have any questions about the fellowship or anything related to the fellowship program, feel free to drop your questions on the chat because I can be answering those live. As for my knowledge, some of my fun facts is that I like salsa dancing and Minecraft bee plushies. I recently acquired an enormous bee plushie from Squishables, which is like this big. It's super large. I really like it. So I guess one more to add to my collection. And some of the side conversations that I'd like to have are about mechanical keyboards. I stopped collecting them about a while ago because they were expensive and I didn't even use them. Like they only made my wall look nice. So I said, okay, I think um, this is very consumist. I'm not sure if that's the correct word, but having to buy just to have more stuff and more variety. But yeah, and yeah, you can also. I'm also studying robotics, so I still don't graduate. This is my third year at college. So I'll be graduating in about a year or so, which wow, that's near. And I'm also into neurotech, being computer interfaces, everything that's related to analyzing brain waves. I'm interested on that, so I'm hoping to get more studies on that field as well. And yeah, if you want to ask me stuff about anything that's not related to the API, feel free as well. This is also an open conversation for you to chat along. And yeah, if you have any questions along the stream, also feel free to drop them on the chat as well. Okay, so this is the agenda for today. We just have a couple slides to get through, nothing too long. Explain what is an API in very easy concepts. I always like to use diagrams, and if you've been to my streams before on past Global Hack Weeks about APIs, you should be familiar with the analogies that I like to use and the diagrams and pictures that I love to use on my slides. Then I'm going to explain how to even use an API. So some of the basic concepts and the different parts towards what is an API and what is an API endpoint. Then we're going to learn about CRUD, which is just explaining what does it mean and why is it so important in software. And yeah, then we're going to learn about FastAPI, which is a section about where can I build my own API. So there's different alternatives. I picked FastAPI for this one, but there's also other alternatives like Flask. But yeah. And lastly, we're gonna use Postman. Actually, we're gonna do the Postman part first because I think it's easier. Then we're gonna go into build our own API endpoint on Python, and then we're gonna run it and we're gonna test that on Postman once we learn how to use it. And if we have time, we'll be able to use ngrok so people from the stream or people that you know can actually access your API as long as your computer is running that endpoint live. Yeah, my goal here is that after this session, you will know how to build an API and test it live. Honestly, I think the concepts that I'll be explaining today and the things that we're going to be doing today are things that you can find in the industry. So these are things that I had to do some at some point in my professional career, or these are things that people that employ you, they assume that you know this stuff, like you know how to use Postman, that you know what an endpoint is, that you know how to develop your own API endpoints, and you know how to test them. We're not going to go really in depth into the core of APIs because we're going to cover many different technologies during today's stream, and we're also going to be doing our own examples. But yeah, I'll be making notes on the sections that definitely need further explanation, or so you can research a bit better after the stream or whenever you have time. Or if you're just curious and you want to ask away, I'll also be answering questions if you have anything that you want to ask about APIs, and I will try to get back to you. And in case I don't, then we'll just search it online and we'll try to get an answer to it together. Okay, so meaning of API, I think we're on day 5, so people on the stream might have an idea or already know exactly what an API is. I'm just going to give it just a brief summary if people are just joining and this is your first stream. So it is basically a software intermediary that allows two applications to talk to each other, and that's basically it. And if there's people on the chat that want to explain what an API is, feel free to drop your own definition on the chat and I'll be reading them out loud in case you want to participate. Drop your own definition of what an API is and then I'll be reading them out loud so you can see them. We can basically compare them with our definition that's on the screen. And while you are doing that, for the people that already know what an API is, we can also, while people are typing that, we can also describe this in a whole restaurant, waiter, customer, kitchen scenario. And I like to do these pictures with the Ratatouille movie because, you know, every time that you look about what an API is, there's always technical concepts and there's some analogies about how an API represents a kitchen. And I think analogies are very helpful to describe things like this. So just a bit random. I have an interview tomorrow about robotics, and they asked me to do a code that's about multi-threading and stuff like that. And to learn about that, I was actually reading this article, and they also used analogies similar to a bathroom and a house and a kitchen. So I think analogies in tech will always be a thing, and that's why I love to explain with analogies so you can remember things better and you can associate things a bit easier. But yeah, that was kind of a side note. So now getting back to this, your you can see your application. So the main core of your app. So where you're gonna have your weather app or your notes app or anything that you want to have as your main application that can be represented as your customer. So the person that arrives to the restaurant and wants to be served. So I'm a customer at I arrive at Ratatouille's restaurant and I want to be served. And then what's the first thing that you do at a restaurant? Well, if you want to access the food and if you want to access the drinks and whatever's in the kitchen, you need to use a waiter. It's not like you're gonna arrive at a restaurant and you're gonna stand up, you're gonna enter the kitchen and you're gonna grab the food yourself. I mean, that's not gonna happen. So what you need to do is that you need to use, well, you need to use is a weird word for using a waiter. You need to contact your waiter in order to get access to that food. And in this case, our waiter is Linguini, which is our API. So as someone expressed in here, your API works as a middleware to connect your kitchen, so where the food is, and your customer, which is your application. So I think this is pretty straightforward if you want to understand how an API works. So let's say that I am a customer and I arrive at Ratatouille's restaurant and I want to order some wine and some Alfredo pasta. So I raise up my hand and then my waiter comes and he say, oh, like, what do you want to order? And then I say my order, and then the waiter has to go back to the kitchen, and then the kitchen starts working on my order, and then says raises his hand or rings a bell saying, oh, the food for the customer is ready. So the waiter has to go all the way back to the kitchen, grab the food, and then go all the way back to the customer to deliver the food. So that's why there's many arrows in here, because the API is going back and forth between your server or your database or whatever you are fetching the data back to your application. So now talking a bit more on technical concepts and not in the analogy format. So you want to have your application, and let's say this is a weather application that wants to predict weather forecasts for let's say for snow because we're in winter. So your application won't know by itself the snow forecast because you are not an expert on weather forecast, and you can't just predict weather. I mean, probably you can, but it's going to be hard, and it's better to get that information from an actual factual source of meteorologists that study weather and that have better forecasts than you do. So you want to access to that information using an API to reach out to that source of information and then bring it back to your app. And the way that you do that is using an API, which in this case is like our waiter delivering the weather information to your customer or your application, which is where you are running everything or what you are building. And there's some cases, and I know there's plenty of hackers in the room in the stream. Yeah, there's plenty of hackers in the stream. So there's sometimes in your hackathon project that you just have many things that you want to connect. There's data that you want to get from your MongoDB database, or there's data that you're sending from a hardware device or some motors, or you just want to transport data in a way. I don't know, maybe your friend has data on his computer and you want to access that information from another computer or from another device. And what you can do is that you can post that into a database and you can access directly from it. Or what you can also do is that you can stream the data using an API. And that's why the importance of creating or learning how to use APIs is super important when you are developing any project. I would say that when I started going to hackathons and I started developing more in a teamwork, manner and not only by myself, because I used to do projects by myself and I would just do everything and plan the way I liked it. But then when I started to work in a team, in hackathons, sometimes there were some cases where, I don't know, I worked on a specific stuff and then my friend worked on other things, and then it was just super hard to integrate everything, that we end up having a really solid app, but everything was just in individual like workspaces. Like we didn't know how to join everything, and that was always a thing that crushed us at events. So after learning how to use APIs and how to create my own APIs, I was in charge of connecting all of the components from my application, and it was basically a lifesaver because I didn't need like many time to develop those endpoints. Like it's just super easy to get started, and you'll see how it will super helpful to getting your hackathon project where you want it to be. Not only for hackathons, you can also apply it again on your software career, or wherever you end up working with, or where you are working right now. You can apply those skills always. Okay, so hopefully this was super clear for everyone in the audience. This is another example. I will not, after this example, I will not be going back to what an API is, because I think I've been super clear on what is it for. And then we're just going to be moving on to the technical stuff that we have planned for today. So for this diagram, as I mentioned, I like bees, and I found this diagram, and I have been presenting this diagram for my third time. Well, this is the third stream that I present this diagram because I really like it so much. I would say it's really self-explanatory, and you can also see and model an API like a beehive and your working bees. So you start on the first step, which is the client, which is basically your honeycomb over here. And these first bees saying, "Hey, we need more nectar to make our honey." In this case, the nectar is data, and honey is your application. And then that message is transferred. You make your API request, and then the bee travels all the way to the server where your data is, which in this case is a flower, because from the flower, you're basically getting all the nectar. That will be your step number 2. And then once you fetch that data, you will move on to number 3, which is the actual response. So the API transfer the requested data back to the requesting application, usually in JSON format. Um, so we have step number 1, we request the data. Then step number 2, we fetch the data. Step number 3, we get a response. And then that response basically goes back all the way to the client. And you can see the steps in here: request, receiving, response. Um, and yeah, this is really nice because you can see how the data, or well, the nectar is traveling all the way from the honeycomb to the flower and then back to our client, which is the application. And yeah, that process basically goes back and forth because your client can be constantly requesting data, and your server or your data or wherever you are fetching that information will be having to constantly provide for you or your application to meet your requirements. Oh, but yeah. Okay, so hopefully the concept of what is an API is super clear. Keep in mind these 3 words: request, receive, and response. Request is API is calling, and you are making an HTTP request. We're going to explain this a bit further. Then number 2, you are receiving. So our worker bee acts as an API going to a flower, which is a server, to collect nectar, which is the data. And then number 3, you are getting the response, which is that the API transferred the requested data back to the requested application, usually in JSON format. So keep in mind those 3 steps: requesting, receiving, and responding. Those are the basic steps on how an API works. And as some people mentioned, it is basically a middleware between your application and your server or your data. All right, so if you have any questions about APIs, make sure to let me know because we'll be moving along. So honestly, I don't think this section is super important, like learning the difference about what an REST API and streaming API is. So I'm just gonna go ahead and skip this. Keep in mind that there's different types of APIs out there. There's not only one API. Right now, we'll be using REST API. Um, and the difference between this is that the connection is closed after the response is received. That is the main difference. And then for the streaming API, you can use the streaming API for things like a video call or something that requires constant access to data. So in the streaming API, the connection is not closed until it is closed by the client or the server. Again, this is used in very specific use cases. I would say the REST API is the one that you hear mostly. But yeah, that's all that I'm gonna add about this. If you want to learn more about the different types of APIs, I did a stream back then about API standards and protocols. You can go ahead and search that on YouTube. But yeah, there's another stream where I explain specifically the different protocols and the different types of APIs that you can use in order to build your application. Okay. So now getting into more of the format of what is a REST API, or more exactly what is an HTTP request. So being more technical about that, we have our client in here, which is our application, or in this case, is a computer that we have in there. Then we are doing an HTTP request, and an HTTP request contains several things. So you get a method, which is either get, post, delete, or put. Get is to fetch, post is to edit something, delete is delete, and put is to edit something that is already there. Then you have your URL, which is your endpoint, which can be slash and then the name of whatever endpoint you want to name it. It can be surveys, it can be dog, it can be bee, fetch data, fetch weather, whatever name that you want to add to that endpoint. And then that information is given to the server, and then the server spits back a response, which is usually in JSON format unless specified otherwise. JSON is basically a structure that we use that has a key and a value. So in this case, this JSON format has a key of server ID, score, message, and response ID. And then we can see the values in there. And those values are the ones that you can use on your application to do whatever you want. So if you want to, going back to the example about our weather application, if you want to fetch weather data, then your weather data can be displayed as a JSON, and then that JSON, you can pre-process that to show it on a nice dashboard on your front end of your application. Let me see if there's another one in here. So this is a more specific example to what we saw previously about having our HTTP method over here and then our URL. So this is a typical example of what a GET API call will resemble. So I will leave this as an exercise for people on the chat. If you can let me know what is this API fetching? Because this is a GET endpoint. So it means that it is fetching some data. So can someone tell me what data is it fetching? Like which type of data is it fetching according to the different request parameters that I have in there? No worries if you don't have an answer. I'll give 1 minute for people to drop their guesses on the chat, and then we're gonna go step by step to analyzing those. I'm not sure why I'm super sleepy. I thought the stream was gonna be 1 hour earlier, but then the time zone changed in US, and I think that just scrambled my whole schedule. We have some proposals in here. So news from the United States in science category. Country US, category science. Then we have another one. Top headlines in US region in the science category. Okay, I think both of your answers complement each other, because over here it was not mentioned that it is the top headlines, but they do mention that it is news. And then someone else in here mentioned that it actually fetches the top headlines. And yes, you are both correct. So in the US region, because we are having country equals US, and then category is science. And then we are passing on our API key, which we will see in a second. So again, in here, we have our different components of what an API request will look like. So first we get started with the HTTP method. In this case, it is get. Get is basically fetching info, so getting data. But you can have other HTTP methods like we saw previously. You can have post, you can have delete, and you can have put, depending on your different on your application. And then you have your endpoint. So your endpoint is literally a URL when you are hosting all of the data. So we're going to see, if this is not clear right now, we're going to see a bit more on how endpoints look like. And you're even going to be creating your own endpoint at the middle of the stream today. Then we have our request parameters. Again, these request parameters are optional. They are only to refine your search. Like in this case, we're fetching, if I only did get and then all the blue stuff, top headlines, it will bring me all of the top headlines. But as I'm adding request parameters, that basically means that I'm filtering stuff. So I'm giving that I want the country to be US and that I want category to be equal to science. And then I'm also passing on an API key because there's some APIs that are not free to use, or maybe they're free to use, but they want to keep your progress and keep the usage and how much you are basically using that API. So you need a key to access all of that information. And that key is a sensitive piece of information that works as authentication for you to use their information on the API. Hopefully these image is clear to you all on the different components. So you have endpoint, HTTP method, request parameters, and API key. Keep in mind that our request parameters and API key are not mandatory always, so it can change from API to API. Again, every API is different. They have the same structure, but they are different from each other. So it is always important to read the documentation and get used to how they are doing their requests. So we have a question in here, is MLH an NGO? That's a really good question. So MLH is a nonprofit organization. So we are basically an organization, even though we work as individual contractors. So the work that we are doing is not free. But yeah, and we basically earn the money to pay employees, well, individual contractors, by basically helping promote our partners, which are all of the partners that we bring to events. So if you've ever been to an MLH hackathon and you've seen those prize categories that are best use of Gemini API, best use of MongoDB, and so on. So those are all of our partners, and we basically help boost their brands for more recognition among hackers for them to use their products, and we are just promoting them. But yeah, and we are a nonprofit organization because we do a good in the world, and we also do a lot of types of events like hackathons, global hack weeks. We have the fellowship as well. So there's many things going on in MLH. But yeah, thanks for the question. I know it's something tricky to ask. Myself, I was always wondering, like, do people in MLH, like, how does that work? Is that like a company? Is that an organization? Because I know all of the things that we do are very hacker style stuff, and usually that stuff, it's weird if you form a company out of it, because how will we be making money if we don't charge for events or we don't request for people to pay us in order to be at events? So that's completely free for people that want to host MLH events. So I really like MLH's values, to always put hackers first. And I guess that's something that really stands out from us and all of the things that we do at the organization. Okay, so moving on. I know the stream had a word that says build your first API with FastAPI using CRUD operations and Postman. That is a really long title with many things in there, but we are going to see the second thing for the day. So we already learned about APIs. So that's one thing that was on the title of the workshop. And then we are going to learn the second thing, which is CRUD. And I don't think there's really much of me to explain on this section. So this is only just a concept of the things that you can do with an API or the things that you can do on a database. And this is something that is really used, and you're gonna hear this word a lot from now on. So CRUD stands for create, read, update, and delete, which are, if we go back, our own API HTTP methods. Get is basically read, then post is create, delete is delete, and put is edit. So that's all the ones that we have in here. So we have get for read, we have create for post, we have update for put, and delete for delete. So that's basically how it works. It's not like CRUD, this framework or a library. It's nothing like that. It's just a concept. So when you say we are going to build a database that supports CRUD operations, that means that you will be able to create, you will be able to read, update, and delete data from that database. And by having CRUD operations on APIs basically means that you can do all of that info to the data that you are fetching from your API. Again, this is not a tech stack. This is not a library. This is just a concept to talk a bit more fluently about the different things that an API can do. But just wanted to clarify on that. Okay. So the next thing on our roadmap is to understand the usage of a simple API, which is called Simple Books API. We're gonna go ahead and just explain this a bit better, and then we're gonna jump into Postman to try these ourselves. Okay. So the first thing, can someone tell me what the endpoint for this API is? I will wait just 1 minute to see if someone can guess what the endpoint for this API is. Let's see. Books. Okay, we have one answer in here. Books, and yes, that's correct. Library management, maybe books in a library database. Okay, so our correct answer in this case is the thing that's over here on the top that's called /books. So the correct, well, I'm not saying that the rest of the answers are wrong. I mean, it's definitely similar. There's some of books in there. But if someone asks you what's the endpoint on this, you are gonna say /books. Okay, so that will be your official endpoint that you are doing /books. And again, you can name this API anything that you want when you are creating your own API. But as this API is already established, we're gonna call it /books. And then you can do different things on /books on this endpoint. You can do get requests, delete, post, and put, and get as well. So going with the first one, the simple one is it is listing all of the books that we have in the database. And then for delete, we can pass on a parameter and delete a book based on their ID. Then for the post one, we are creating a book and we are passing all of our data on the body. We're going to see this a bit later. And then for put, we use a method to update a book, and we have to pass on our book ID to know which book is the one that we're going to be editing. And then for the last one, we can also retrieve a book based on their ID. As we saw on the example in here, we are passing on some request parameters. So it's the same in this case. One of the request parameters that we're using in here, it's called book ID. So it's one that we have over there as well. Okay, so again, this endpoint is called /books, and we can do several things or different methods in there. We can also see the request parameters, and we can see how the HTTP methods are being used. All right, so now moving on to the Postman part. I think we are nearly at the middle of the stream, so it's now time to start working on what we're going to be doing today. So for Postman, Postman is a desktop and web application designed for building and testing APIs. You can do several things in Postman. You can send requests, you can check responses, and you can also add your own parameters. So you can see this as a test hub for your APIs. So whenever you want to test your API fast, you can use Postman. Of course, there's other methods to test your API, like using ping, or you can do curl requests on your terminal. But with Postman, you will be able to see a nice interface, and you can edit things, and you can also create your own HTTP methods in there. There's more stuff that you can do in Postman to do tests, and build collections and more. Right now, I'm not going to go super in depth about what Postman is, but we're going to just be testing out their one simple endpoint and see all of the different things that you can do in there. All right, so let's move on to our example. So going back to the books example, this is actually an API that we can use and that we can access. And the link to access it, I'm going to send it on the chat, but it's mlh.link/books API. I'm going to send the complete link on the chat so you can just go ahead and click it. But feel free to just copy paste it. I mean, it's a short link, so you can access it. And then I'm also going to be sharing screen of these books API so we can go ahead and test it ourselves. I'm just going to give you a couple minutes for you to enter that link. Well, a couple seconds. I think minutes is too long. So I'm just going to give you a couple seconds for you to access that link, and then we're going to be moving on. Okay, let me start sharing my screen in the meantime. It's only like almost 10 p.m. in here, and I don't know why I'm super sleepy. You know, I usually drink coffee at night. I don't know if that's healthy, but that has been something that I've been recently doing. But yeah. Just that during the weekend, I was at a hackathon, Make UC, and with all the delays on the planes going on, my plane got delayed, and I got home like really late, and then I had class early in the morning, and I was like, I'm struggling. I was internally struggling with that. Okay, so let's see. There we go. All right, so I'm gonna access the same link that I share with you on the chat. So mlh.link dash what was it? Books and dash API. Okay, and let me make this a bit bigger so you can see it better. I think that's fairly nice for you to see. All right, so before I get started with these docs so we can understand it better, starting here, Postman and Introduction for Testers documentation, please go ahead and log in. I am already automatically logged in. I'm going to give you about 2 minutes for you to create your account or log in, because to run all of the things that we're going to be running, it's going to ask you to log in. So it's better for you to do it now, better than later when we are moving on and then you don't have time. So yeah, please go ahead and log in. I'll just give you 2 minutes for you to do that. I'm going to be around here. Honestly, I don't have many topics for side conversations, but if anyone has any side conversation topic, feel free to drop it in the chat and we can figure out something. We definitely can. Dun, dun. Okay. Let's see. Postman. Oh, and by the way, you can also download the Postman app. I Usually, I don't do it on this laptop. I only do it on my work laptop. But you can also download the desktop Postman. There's more things that you can do in there. So just as an FYI. Okay, there's a question in here. How long have you been an MLH coach? So for coaching, almost 2 years. I think 1 year and a couple months, like 8 or 7 months. I'll have to count them. I entered MLH on the internship side, so on the fellowship, and then after doing that, I went to a couple MLH hackathons, and I was going to a hackathon almost every weekend, so it was a really intense. And then I learned about MLH coaches and all of the work that they do. And I was like, why not? This sounds really interesting. It sounds like a really cool job. Honestly, I would say it's the best job ever. You get to travel, you get to meet people, you get to help out at events, give awesome workshops, and then I don't know, just mentor around. So it's something that I really like. I learned about that and then I decided to apply, then went through the whole process. And there's a lot of trainings that you had to do before you become an official coach. You need to pass on different trainings and different events for you to be officially left alone. So like they're going to hire you and then they're gonna drop you in a hackathon all by yourself. There's usually, well, there's always training for new coaches. And yeah, then I'm just doing things around like the Global Hack Weeks streaming and then also the fellowship stuff, being a pod leader now, having to coordinate meetings between our different partners, which are companies. Like right now, I've been mentoring people and coordinating stuff with Meta and Midnight as well, which are our most recent partners. But yeah, there's mostly the things that I've been doing at MLH. Um, and yeah, we're in Global Hack Week now. Many streams. There was a time where I was doing like 6 streams every Global Hack Week. But I guess right now, as I'm doing more stuff in MLH, I've reduced that amount of streams. But that was really intense. I was really, really invested on doing plenty of streams. All right, so I think you're already logged in, so let's move on. So, Postman, introduction for testers documentation. All right, so we're not gonna be, we can do this, but not necessary. I'm just gonna go scroll down and let me make this smaller. Like that's better. Okay, so there's an intro in here that you can use. I don't know what these. Oh no, nope, I'm not gonna watch that. But if you want to watch that video, an introduction to Postman from people that officially work at Postman, feel free to do so. It looks really interesting. I think I've seen it a couple of times. It's 56 minutes long. Never mind. I think I've never seen that. But if you want to be understand Postman a bit better, you can watch at least some of these video. And you can also view the slides here. I think this is much more interesting. This is nice. But yeah, you can. I think these slides are way better to understand what an API is from scratch. It's nice that they have different slides in here. All right, so let's move on. Okay, here we go. Library API reference. This is an API reference for the library API used in API 101. You can see the glitch code for the API here. And then we have our different endpoints. So all of the APIs that you are going to be accessing on your on whatever project you're doing, there's always going to be docs on how to use it. And I'm actually going to explain, well, not going to explain, but we're going to see different examples of real APIs. Not saying that this is API is not real, but this is just something that maybe you wouldn't use in a real project. It's just for practice and for learning. So this is our first endpoint. It is books, and it is a get HTTP method. And our endpoint here is this one. So if we go ahead and we can test this, it will return all the books in the library database. And there's optional filters can be passed as query parameters. And then we have the query parameters that we can pass on search, which is a string. Then we can pass on, if it's already checked out, the genre. And then in here, we have an example of how we can run this. As I was saying, you can run a call request, which is super easy. You can just copy paste this and you can open a new terminal. Oh, wait. The terminal's not seeing. Hold on. There we go. So I can just open up a terminal in here, and then I can literally copy paste that in here. So what I did is I just copy paste this, and then I go to my terminal in here and just paste this, and then just do it. It was not the decimal number at all. But well, Windows is super weird. I always use a different OS. Port number, not the decimal. And where's the port number? I didn't even specify a port number. Okay, but yeah, if you try it, I'm pretty sure it will work. You can also do a regular ping to this endpoint. So this one over here. Let's try doing that. Let's try doing one to this. Okay, or we could just go the regular way. Honestly, Postman doesn't work with pull requests naturally. Postman is mostly to test those out without the need of using pull requests. Because if you have a really extensive, for example, if you have a really extensive body or you want to add a lot of things, it will be weird to do it on the terminal and probably not very neat. So that's why we want to use Postman for that. We can click on here where it says get books and then click on open request. And then we can see the natural dashboard for Postman. So when you open up Postman regularly, you're going to see all of this stuff in here. So I'm just going to guide you through. So in here, we have our HTTP method, which in this case is a get method. You can change it to whatever you want it to be. Then in this section here, it's where you're going to be pasting your endpoint and your URL. And then you can have your base URL in here, which is basically a variable. You can see there's no need for us to be having this variable in here, but it is needed so you can display it a bit. It's more clean, but it's not an obligation. I mean, you can also have all of this endpoint in here, but you can create variables to make it easier and not the need to be writing the whole endpoint and just to be much more cleaner. We have a question here. How do we navigate to the collection to be cloned? So we're not going to be cloning any collection right now. We're just going to be testing them out. But if you want to go to where I am right now, just go ahead and click in here on open request. I can also, I believe I can share this specific link to that section. And then you click on open request and it will open the request on a new small tab. Like this. And in this case, our endpoint is /books and our base URL is this one, which will not change for all of the different endpoints. So if we go back over here, you should be able to see, let's go. So again, this is the same base URL, and the only thing that's going to be changing is what's on the end. So if you want to add any more query parameters or more stuff in there, you're going to be adding them in there, and then you can use that variable in here that it's automatically created for you right now, but you can also create different variables for your specific collections. In this case, we only have this variable that's called base URL, but if we are able to clone these, then you can do it by your own. And yeah, here you can see all of the collections. There's many in here, but there's no need to be worried for that because there's many forks in there. We're not going to be forking anything. We're just going to be testing Postman out. So if we click send on this one, we should be able to... Why request content is permanently? Oh, that's sad. Requested content is permanently deleted from the server. So looks like this is affected now. That's so weird. Glitch project hosting is no longer available. That's so sad. I think this example is not available anymore. Wait, but I was trying these earlier and I thought it was working. Let's see if we can clone this and we can make it work. But honestly, it says that this is not available anymore. That's weird because this is API is like core to explaining API concepts. I always use this API for explaining the basics, and it looks like it's defected for now. Did any of you made this work? Like, did it work on your side? But I think it's just a general. It's just a general mistake. Um, let's see if we can try this other one over here. Let's see. Try. It's the same in this one. It says that it's no longer there. Okay. Let me delete this. Let's see if we can get an own copy and then make it work, but I don't think so because this is the data that is being hosted by this endpoint. So that was maybe why it was rejecting my stuff in here. URL rejected. So I think we were close in there. I really wanted to show this example. Let's see if I can find another one. Simple books API example. And then if I can't find an example, then we're just gonna use, we're just gonna start creating our own so we don't delay things too much. And then we're gonna test them in Postman anyway, so you'll get an idea of how it works. Okay, here's another one. Yeah, this is the same one that's not working. The glitch me one. Too bad. That was a really nice API. Because there's even a lot of docs on it, building a simple REST API. I guess this is another one. Okay, no, this is not related. And here's another one, Simple Books API. Or maybe it's the same one and it's just a different link. Yeah, this is the same one. Oh, this one actually worked. Let's see. Nice. Okay. I don't know who this user is, but thank you for saving us today. I'm gonna be sending these exact links so you can access exactly what I'm looking at. There we go. So the first endpoint in here is just a get endpoint, and it's just to know the status of our API. Usually these endpoints are called health endpoints because it's just to know if your endpoint is healthy, so your API is up and running. So right now it's just doing a basic check and it's just returning, okay, everything's good to go. Your API is working correctly. And then you can start moving on to the next endpoints. Sorry. So the first one is fetching the list of books. And in this case, we are using a query parameter to filter for type of books. In this case, we're filtering nonfiction. So we filter all of the books that we have in our library or in our database that are nonfiction. So we have Just As I Am and Untamed. If we delete these, if we delete that and then we just want to get the whole list of books, then we can see that there's more books in here. So we have the Russian, the Vanishing Half, Midnight Library, and so on. And then we also have the nonfiction ones. And yeah, if you're gonna go ahead and then we can type, maybe we want to filter only the fiction ones. So you will just go ahead and do fiction, and then we only fetch the ones that are fiction. So these are just adding query parameters so you can filter your stuff out. This also happens in regular APIs, so make sure to keep that in mind. And then if you want to get just a single book, in this case, you can use a book ID. In this case, there's a variable in here that's passing on our book ID, and then we can say, okay, I want to get the book ID number 2. So I'm just gonna close that, and then I'm just gonna send this. And then if you're seeing, we just fetched book ID number 2. And this is a book that's named Just As I Am. It has a nonfiction type, and you can see metadata and the author and more stuff in there, and even the price, which is pretty cool. Again, let's say we want to change now to fetch book number 3. Let's see if there's a book number 3 in there. We're going to send this, and then there we go. So we fetch book number 3, which is called The Vanishing Half. So you can add more query parameters. I believe those are the ones that you can be using. So type of book, and then also getting a single book. And then let's say that you want to submit an order. So this is a different endpoint. This is a different HTTP method. So in this case, we are using post. So to publish data, so create a new stuff. And our endpoint ends with slash orders. Then if we go back into body in here, this is the data that we're going to be adding, into our collection of books. So we are creating a book ID in this case, which is 3, and then our customer name, which is named John. Then we can go ahead and click send. Missing authorization header. Oh, yep. So for this one, we actually need authentication in order to use the API. So which in this case will be kind of like our API key. So if we go ahead and click on auth, you're going to see this token, and this is also a variable that it says access token. It's probably that this token is corresponding to this person. So we need to generate a new one. So to generate a new one, we can go in here and see API authentication. I'm assuming it's this one. So API clients, and let's click on send and see if I can get a new one. API client already registered, tried a new email. So if we go to body, we can generate a new authentication. Well, I'm going to use just a random email, jocelyn@gmail.com. So we need to authenticate ourselves so we can have our authentication token to then use for orders. We're going to click on send. Oh, wait, I think I have to save this stuff. Oh, no. API client already registered. I don't think this is registered. Let's try like a super random name. Try a different email. Just a random email over there. Okay, yes, apparently someone named Jocelyn had already registered with that same email. So if you're seeing, once you register your unique name and your unique email, then you should get this access token. And this access token is the one that we're going to be using on the submitting an order endpoint. So if we go over here into authentication and then on access token, we can hover inside and then we can replace this with our own authentication token. There we go. And let's hope that it's not going to ask me to save this. Let's just click on send and see if it works. Ugh, I think I'm gonna have to send this. Oh, and by the way, this is a viewer token, but there's other ways that you can authenticate yourselves. Viewer token is usually one of the normal ones, or you can also have a authentication or an API key, as I was mentioning. So there's some APIs. Well, I wouldn't say some. Most APIs they need you to use authentication tokens in order to use the specific services. In this case, I needed an authentication token in order to access to submit a new order. Why? Because I will be basically editing their database or whatever system they have. So to fetch data, I don't need an authentication token because I mean I'm just reading data. But to edit their data, I actually need an authentication token. And if you want to see this in a more secure perspective, if you are a company and you have all of your data in a database and then you're having your employees access that data through an API, of course you want to have authentication tokens because then anyone could access your endpoints just like I am doing right now by accessing the books endpoint. And you don't want to do that because that's probably sensitive information and you want to take care of that securely. Okay, so I would say we are ready with the Postman part. That's mostly what we're going to be covering for Postman today. Right now, we're going to go into VS Code and we're going to start learning about the Fast API, and then we're gonna test that API into this endpoint, so we can see that it's working properly. All right. So let me remove this and add to stage. All right, so the next section is FastAPI. So FastAPI is basically a high-performance Python web framework used for building APIs. And I honestly liked it so much because it gives you the proper documentation for your API. And yeah, there's also other alternatives. There's Flask as well. I prefer FastAPI because it gives you the docs and it's really neat to do it. But there's also other things that you can do in there as well. And we can go ahead and search the docs. I dropped the link on the screen, but I can also type it on the chat so you can have more access to it. And I'm also going to be accessing those docs in a minute. Okay, there's the endpoint over there. Let me open that up in here. So mlh.links dash fast API dash docs. Again, make sure to access these docs so you are able to see it. All right, so fast API over here. Let me make this a bit bigger. Oh, wait, wrong screen. Huh. Why is it grabbing my wrong screen? Okay, there we go. It's a bit bigger, but there it is. So this is the same description that I had before. FastAPI is a web framework for building APIs with Python based on standard Python type hints. And there's different benefits that you can have, and it says that it is based on the open standard for APIs from OpenAPI, which is previously known as Swagger, and it also follows the JSON schema. And yeah, we can go ahead and see the docs in here. The first thing is that you will install FastAPI, and then we can just run this simple example that we have over here. And then you can just run this. I was having issues to run it using this. I will show you which command I was using in case you have errors. But yeah. In the meantime, I'm going to be sharing the GitHub repository as well. So let me jump over to the GitHub. Right now, I don't have anything in there, but I'm gonna be cloning that repository. Um, mm, so I'm gonna be sharing this with you on the chat so you can have it. There's again, there's nothing in there, but I'm gonna be adding info, and I'm also gonna be adding a nice README so you can access it. Uh, but yeah, right now I'm just gonna give a brief 5 minute break, and then we're gonna jump into the coding section for the second part, well, second half of the stream to develop our own API. If you have any questions, let me know in the chat. In the meantime, feel free to review the docs that I shared over there. And yeah, we'll be back. I'll see you in exactly 5 minutes. Okay, hi everyone, I am back. So let me remove this banner. Um, where were we? So we were doing. Oh yeah, we were learning about FastAPI. But I also shared the GitHub repository, so you can also go ahead and check that out. I'm gonna go ahead and move this recycle bin. Okay, so let me share my whole screen instead. Whoops, there we go. And I want to show you some examples of APIs. So we can start with a simple one. We can start with the mlh.link/Gemini. And let's go ahead and click on AI Studio. I'll go ahead and share this link as well on the chat. Dash AI Studio. There we go. Okay, and in here, this is an AI studio for Gemini. I'm not gonna be explaining like what this is for, but what we do care is about the docs to use this API. So if I click on this button that says documentation, oh my battery, hold on. Okay, there it is. So if we go ahead and click on Gemini in here, for the docs, we should be able to see all of the docs in here with the different stuff that we can do. So again, it says explore the API. So let's say navigate image generation, aka Nano Banana. And then we can see our API working in here. Wow, this is really cool. And yeah, this is just basically checking the docs for an API. There's nothing weird about that. They always have different docs in here. Wow, this is really nice. I low-key want to try this. This looks so nice. A kawaii style sticker of a happy red panda wearing a tiny bamboo hat. It's munching on a green bamboo leaf. The design features bold, clean outlines. Wow. Honestly, this is really good. Like, wow. Okay, but we're not featuring AI today, so too sad. All right, so let's go back to FastAPI. So FastAPI is basically a tool that will help us create our own API. So we're not going to be using an API, we're going to be creating our own API. We're not going to be doing something too complex. I'm just going to be showing you how to run this example and then how it looks. And then we're going to use ngrok. So you can publish it and then you can go ahead and create the endpoints that you want. For the interest of time, I'm just gonna be running the examples that are here. But yeah, feel free to ask away if you have any questions. So the first thing that it is asking is to install pip install FastAPI standard and so on. I'm going to clone my own repo so I can have the code in there. Let me open a new window for you all. There we go. Terminal, new terminal. And I'm gonna clone this so you can have all of the stuff in here. Git clone, and then there we go. Oh no, I cloned it on the wrong one. Hold on. Open folder. Let me call this Global Hack Week of Fast API. I'm gonna move this to downloads. There we go. Awesome, awesome. Okay, so you don't have to clone the repository. I'm only cloning the repository so you can see the code at the same time in case that we want to add more stuff. Um, but yeah, let me then clone this repository again. Git. Oh. There we go. And cd. There we go. Okay, so I'm just gonna create a new file in here. I'm just gonna call this app.py. And I'm gonna close Copilot for a minute. And yeah, the first thing that we're gonna do, you can go ahead and create a new virtual environment, as it says in here. Create an activated virtual environment, and then install the FastAPI. So you're just gonna go ahead and copy paste this and paste it over here. Let me create a new one. Oh, that's not the correct one. Why is it copying this thing? Yeah, you can use this one. This one is the one that worked for me because I'm using Windows. So let me paste that on the chat. There it is. So you can install it as well. I already have it installed, so there's no need for me to run this again, but please go ahead and do so. I'm going to give you a couple seconds for you to run that command and set up your environment so we can go ahead and run this stuff. Let me know if you have any issues while you are running that command, but I don't think so. And then the next thing that we're gonna do, we're just gonna play 6 samples, and then we're gonna run it as well. Okay, so let's go back to the docs again. Everything that I'm doing, I'm doing this out of the documentation. So yeah. Yeah. I mentioned, well, I'm going to read the question. Will you not make a BNB first before installing FastAPI? You can go ahead and do a BNB. I already have it installed on the whole computer, not only an individual virtual environment, as I use it really, really often. But if you don't want to screw your environment as I am doing it, you can go ahead and create a virtual environment. I can show how to do that super quick. You can do Control-Shift-P, and then over here where it says Python create environment, or you can just search environment, and then you can choose between quick create or BNB. I usually use BNB because it allows me to select the version of Python that I want to use. In this case, I'm just running it locally. So there's no BNB in here. It's just my local computer and its own dependencies. But yeah, if you want to keep your dependencies organized for this project, you can go ahead and do so. Okay, so next, I'm going to go ahead and copy this example over here on our app. And copy in here. So this one doesn't have, okay, I can go ahead and create the virtual environment then. Let's do 3.12. The only thing is that I was having issues with this a bit earlier. But let's see. I'm creating it now. And then in here, just a bit of an explanation. You're just creating your FastAPI app, and then you can just go ahead and start creating all of the different endpoints that you want to have. In this case, we have a basic endpoint, which is just a slash, and then we have a second endpoint that's called items, and it receives an item ID. And then you just have the function that you want to do, and then the return, which is basically what you will be returning in this case. Okay, I think, yep, the virtual environment is up. So let me go ahead and run this one. There we go. Okay, and I'm also gonna let me add this on my git ignore. I'm gonna add the BNB on my git ignore so I don't post this on GitHub. And then I can post this on GitHub so you can have it as well. And I'm also gonna post on the README the command that I just ran, which is this one. I'll just wait this to finish building. Oh, and yeah, there's the mistake that I was having. Let me try switching to let's do it BNB number 1. Or I can just switch to the example that I have in here. Well, first I'll just delete this. Delete motor recycle bin. I don't need this anymore. Okay, and let's post this simple example. There we go. And let me switch back to the other workspace. This one. Okay, I'll use this workspace as I have everything set up in here, I believe. I'm just gonna go ahead and create this again and then copy the same code that I have over here. Okay, there we go. Let's see. Awesome. Okay, and let me delete everything so you don't, there's no like trash in there. Okay, I'll install these directly. Let's see if it's there. This is too bad. I'm just having many issues with my Python versions. I actually tested before the stream and it was working, but I don't remember which version was I using. I thought it was this one, but I'm not sure. 3.12.7. Let's use the global one. Not yet. Nope. Nope. Maybe this one. Okay, 3.11 had it. There it is. So now to run this, you can naturally use this one, but this one did not work for me. I'm gonna send this one on the chat so you can have it. And then I can also share the other command that I always use, which also lets you do more stuff. So you can also add the port where you want to run your API and the URL. I can also share that one on the chat. So let me just search it really quick. There we go. So this one. And I'm also gonna add that one over here. So this one will only have 2 endpoints. So this is a basic endpoint. So it would just be hello world, and then your first official endpoint will be this one. So endpoint with items. And you can add different items and IDs, and you will see how this works, which is a basic example that FastAPI is giving us. So I'm just going to go ahead and paste that command on my terminal in here. We are using this host, which is localhost. It can also be 0.0.0.0. And you can choose a port where you want to run to. Naturally, it's always 8,000. So just so you can keep up with the standards, I'm going to start running that. And then it will give me a localhost URL where my API is up and running. If there is any error or if anything happens, you will receive a warning message or anything that you have in there. I'm gonna go and click on this so we can see it. And let me switch my tab over here. Okay, so in here we're seeing the basic endpoint, which is hello world. And a quick trick, if you want to see the docs for your API, as I was mentioning, I really like FastAPI because it allows you to have docs whenever you are working. So you're just going to go ahead and click on docs in here. And there we go. So you can see your FastAPI over here, and you can see the different docs, or well, the different endpoints that you have running. So we have the basic one, which is the root over here, and then we have the second one, which is the items, and then we just have the item ID in here. This is a get request, which means that we cannot edit anything, but we can add query parameters, and the first query parameter is an item ID. So if we click over here on try it out, we can go ahead and type any item ID that we want, and also a query where we want to get that one. And we can see an example value in here. So we can see that we are receiving a string and we are receiving a 0, which is our ID. So let's try doing, which one is this? We can try 1, and then we can try Q and see what happens. And there we go. So we get our response over here. Response body, our item ID is equal to 1, and Q is equal to Q. And yeah, in this case, this is just a simple example of items ID, but you can picture this as we were talking earlier about having your weather API and or your books API, where you can fetch the different books that are out there, and you can query your books depending on the ID that you have or the gender that you are managing in there. But yeah. Oh, hello, hi over there. Hi in there. We are almost at the end of the stream, but so glad that you joined at the end to see the best part, where we are testing our own API. Okay, great. So feel free to add any other endpoints as you wish on this code. I'm not gonna be adding like any more for the day, because I also want to test this on ngrok, and I want to do it on the Postman so you can see how it works on both ends. And we only have like about 15 minutes left, so we want to be a bit more conscious about time. All right, so the next part will be moving on to ngrok. So now that we have, let me go back. So now that we have an endpoint, which in this case is my local host, let me delete all this. So we have this endpoint, which is my local host, right? But if I share this with someone, or if I want to use this with someone else, they won't be able to, because it's only running locally on my computer. So the way to fix that, there's this tool called ngrok that allows you to create private tunnels, so you can basically host your endpoint for more people to be able to reach it on your network as well. So I'm gonna look ngrok up, and I'm gonna share the docs with you so you can also create an account. Let me share this with you on the chat. There we go. So as I was mentioning, ngrok is an API gateway for building. Basically, it allows you to publish your own APIs, and it's really cool. Things to keep in mind: you need to create an account. I'm gonna log in, but feel free to create an account. Oh, I'm not sure if I'd use Google. Let's try this one. You need to create an account because you will need to authenticate the first time that you use it. There's no need for me to do it, but I'm going to show you how to do it if it's your first time using this tool. And once you do it the first time, then there will not be no need to do it again. Oh, maybe I did it with GitHub. Let's see. In the meantime, while I'm figuring which account I used, feel free to start creating your account as well. And then once you create your account, just go ahead and follow these steps. I shouldn't be showing that that token in here. I never use this account, so I really don't care. But yeah, feel free to follow these instructions, and then you can use this just to test to see if it's running. It's super simple. If you can also download this, or you can do several stuff. It will show with the platform that you're using. So I don't know, let's say you're in Linux and you just have to run these commands and add your authentication token, and then you're all set to move on. Mac OS as well. I love this. This is so simple. I don't like Windows. And yeah, I'm just gonna give you a couple minutes for you to do that. And yeah, I'm just gonna hang around in here. I would say we have plenty of time left because we only need to make sure that you authenticate for your ngrok account, so we can, I wouldn't say deploy because you're not deploying anything. You're mostly creating this virtual private tunnel where you are able to host your API on the internet. And then once we do that, then we're just going to test it on Postman and see that everything is super lovely and working correctly over there. All right, so for the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and start doing the ngrok part. I promise you it's super simple. So the only thing that you need to do is that you're going to head over into the terminal section. So onto here. And if you are seeing, we're running these on port 8000. So our ngrok tunnel must be on the same port. I'm going to create a new terminal. Keep in mind that you need to have these running in order to use the ngrok tool. So we're going to do ngrok http and then the port number that we're using, which in this case is 8000. I'm just going to hit enter, and then it's going to create my gateway. So here we go. So now it is basically forwarding everything which is on this local host into this URL over here. Let me go ahead and share this. And if I actually go ahead and share this with you on the chat, you'll be able to access that API. Wow. Interesting. Yeah, so you should be able to, well, you will be able to access my API through this URL. And if I go enter this and click on visit site, there we go. So I'm seeing exactly the same thing that was on my local host. And this is really cool. And this tool is also super helpful for hackathon projects. Because imagine saying like, oh, the API only works on my computer. Lame, right? So now that you have ngrok, you are able to run your API anywhere. So you can have judges test your API, and you can also build projects with it, which is, to be honest, really cool. This is a tool that I use on almost every project that I have where I need to use APIs. Of course, this is not the way that you do it at an enterprise level. This is just for you to get started and to start learning about how APIs work. Keep in mind that if you shut down your computer or, well, kill the terminal, the whole process is going to end. So if I do Control-C on this terminal, then everything is going to die and the URL won't be accessible anymore. Too sad, right? So as long as you have this terminal running, you should be able to run any request. And you can also try out the endpoint that I shared with you in there. All right, so if I go back, let me close this tab C over here. So if I go back to my Postman over here, let's try it in here. So if I go back to my Postman in here and paste this ngrok command with the default gateway in here, my default endpoint, which is a slash, and hit on send, then I will be seeing the hello world in here, which is really nice. So this basically means that it's working correctly and that you're able to access these API whenever you want, anywhere you want, and the only requirement is that I am running that terminal over there. But yeah, I know that at the end I went a bit too fast, but feel free to watch the recording. And if you have any questions, please let me know in the chat. I'll be around for a couple more minutes before we wrap up. But hopefully you were able to learn about the different tools that are in there. I know we didn't do a really complex project, but I really wanted you to test these tools out, because once you start testing them, then you can start creating more complex projects. And feel free to view my past streams about protocols and API standards and more streams that I've done related to APIs where we create more complex APIs as well. Or we also use different APIs that are out there. But for the meantime, you already know how to use ngrok, you already know how to use FastAPI, you already know how to use Postman, and you also know how to create your own API, which is most importantly, and also understand what an API is. Because we are on Global Hack Week, API Week, which is really interesting. Okay, so let me remove this and let's go ahead and to the final. All right, so if you enjoyed this stream or you would like to recommend anything for future streams, feel free to answer, well, better fill out that form so you can have your feedback. I'm just copy pasting that link over here so you can just click it. I believe I typed it correctly, but I think my eyes are a bit tired right now with the glowing screen. But it's mlh.link slash global hack week or GHW feedback. It won't take you more than 3 minutes. It's super simple. And yeah, we have a couple questions in here, some comments, and where are the recordings? So the recordings, you can find them on our YouTube channel. Once I hit close on this stream, the recording will be automatically uploaded to our YouTube channel. So you can go ahead and look us up on YouTube as MLH or Major League Hacking, and then you can go ahead and hit the live streams or live videos tab on the YouTube page, and then you should be able to see all of the recordings from all of our Global Hack Weeks historically, which are plenty in there. And yeah, thank you as well for attending. I'll be around on the Discord. You can always reach out to me in there, or you can also connect with me. And yeah, I guess I will be wrapping up. It was really nice to see you. And remember that there's still more things to go on this Global Hack Week. This is not the last stream. There will be more events. So definitely stay tuned for Git Good with Git in the morning. So basically tomorrow, which is a really nice workshop. And then there's also our closing ceremony, which will be at the almost half of the day, depending on which time zone you are. But yeah, I guess have a lovely night or a lovely morning or a good day if you are just going in the middle of it. And I'll be seeing you on the next Global Hack Week or at any hackathon. If you ever see me at any hackathon around there, I'll be around. Bye, everyone.